Hello everyone and welcome to the first video of 2025. Happy New Year. Hope you guys had a great one. Last week's video I talked about everything that we got up to in 2024 and sort of what you can expect from in 2025. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely do so. It'll give you a rough idea on what you can expect in 2025. This week though, we are having some fun and talking about a topic that is probably quite relevant at the minute because I know a lot of people have just gone through Christmas and got loads of goodies, and they might have got a camera and they might want to be starting some street photography for the first time. So, I'm going to be talking about some things that I wish I knew and I wish someone told me when I was starting, and hopefully it can help some of you that are just getting started in street photography yourself. The first thing is don't worry too much about what gear you have. It's more about the environment you're shooting in, and you can do it on anything. You don't need a fancy camera brand. You don't need one camera brand over another. You don't need to have a certain lens type or anything like that. When you're getting started, it can literally be done on anything. There are sure different lenses that people opt for street, and it's because of different aperture levels and all these sorts of stuff, and the fact that you can get a nice bit of separation with certain lenses, and people opt for primes and stuff like that. It's usually 28mm, 50, 90 for detail, maybe a 35 if they don't want to do a 28. And they're sort of the most common ones. But when you're starting out, you can literally have anything. Your phone in your pocket, an old camera that's been in the loft, or something, absolutely budget and basic, because all you're doing is capturing the everyday, right? So you can shoot it on an everyday optic. So, for example, you go out with your phone most days anyway. What's stopping you from taking a photo, because most phone cameras are actually pretty decent. These videos are all shot on an iPhone. It looks pretty good, right? There's no fancy cameras, there's no fancy lenses. Your pictures can look the same. Most phones can shoot RAW now, which I'll get onto as a separate point, but that's important because for the editing process you want RAW. And yeah, anything in your pocket is worthwhile doing. It's more about getting out and actually shooting than worrying about, oh, what lens do I take? What body do I take? Just do it. There's a thing that I refer to quite a bit called the overburden of choice. And it's very much a real thing. If you've got loads of different cameras and you see other street photographers and they've got a ton of different lenses and you haven't got their lens, so you need to go and get their lens, otherwise you won't get good images, you're never going to get out and actually shoot because you're always worrying about what other people are using. So don't worry about that. Street photography can be done on anything. That is the first point, and probably the main point. Just get out and shoot. Whatever you have in your back pocket, whatever camera you got for Christmas, it will work as you're starting out. Go out, explore your local town, and get involved with the local surroundings. Take some photos, and I'm sure they will be great. The next point is don't expect to be making magic day one because it's not going to happen. You need to sort of build your confidence levels for one, but also your understanding of the street and where to go and what you're looking for as a second point. I wish someone told me that you need to sort of think about street is one big broad topic. You need to think about it in a bit more depth. What do you want to shoot within street? What inspires you? I wish someone asked me that question because at the start I was taking photos of everything. A random person walking down the street wouldn't interest me at all now, unless there was good light, shadow, silhouette. But that's what I mean, right? I adapted that as I go. I figured out what I like and what inspires me, and I stick to that now. But when I started, I was taking photos of absolutely everything. Try and get that knocked out as soon as possible. You're going to want to go out, take photos of things, and find what your inspiration is as early as possible to find your own niche within street photography because there is a lot of it. And I feel like, being able to identify whether you're a subject street photographer and you're focusing on the actual person in the scene, or you're shooting an actual scene itself and the person in it doesn't really matter. Or better yet, you don't shoot people at all and you're shooting city architecture or cars or anything like that because, in a way, if you're out in the everyday, that is street photography as well. It doesn't have to include people, it can include elements of the human was here, if you will. So, yeah, find your niche It doesn't have to be in your face with a camera if you don't feel confident doing it. You can take photos of scenes. They do look good. I do it. I think my photos look good. And I sort of adapted that over time. You should do that too. The next thing is obviously start off small. If you're in big cities or around big cities, you may be tempted to go in direct into the hustle and bustle and just go straight for it. That can be daunting. Taking photos of strangers is not an easy feat by any stretch of the word. You'll be scared of confrontation, which I've made a whole dedicated video on if you do want to check that out. But you can have so many different factors that will either make your experience not a good one. And when you're starting out, you want as many positive experiences as possible to give you that boost to go out and shoot more. So the reason I say start off small is just ease yourself into it. Don't go into the busiest part of London, for example. When I started out, I was walking all over the place, but I knew the city well and I knew where to go to have a little bit of quiet time if I needed to. That's important. Even if you are in a major city like London or New York, there are always quieter areas. And that might be a good place for you to start. Finding, a solo subject rather than a big group of people might be easier for you. But at the same time, you know yourself better than anyone. So if you find that you're going to be comfortable in bigger crowds and be able to blend in amongst the crowd, if you will, that might be an option as well. But you need to figure that out as you go. I personally recommend starting off in a quieter area because then if you do mess up, you're not messing up and, feeling like you're going to miss another shot. You can take your time, slow the pace down a little bit, and you might be able to get more shots and better shots that way. Also, on top of that, go to touristic spots as well. If you don't mind it getting a little bit busy, touristic spots are great because people are more inclined to seeing a camera. And if you are in a city, touristic spots are great because, like I say, people notice that other people are going to be taking photos of things. So they're less likely to be looking at what people are taking photos of and just more being blasé about it. So you're able to blend in a lot more if you're taking photos of people, and that can help you build your confidence level up as well. The next thing relates to after you've actually taken the photos and after you've been out. You may feel like you've got hundreds and hundreds of photos on your SD card or your camera roll on your phone if you're choosing to use a smartphone to start off with. You might feel like most of them are terrible, and to be fair, on your first time, they probably are. So that's fine. Not every day's a winner, and that's important to know. You can go out and have hundreds of photos and only one or two be any good. And your definition of good will change the more you do street photography. My definition of good back when I started is not my definition of good now. And I'm sure in a year or two's time, my definition of good now will not be my definition of good then. So it changes, but your definition of good is always going to change. So make sure you keep a backup of those photos somewhere. Even though you may feel tempted to delete it, and a lot of them might be rubbish to you now, your idea of street photography or your idea on what you want to shoot might change. So those photos might come in handy later on down the line. So it's always good to keep a backup of those ones that you're umming and ahhing about. I'm not saying keep absolutely every single one because there might be ones that are absolute blurry messes where you've completely misfocused or the lighting's not good and you can't see anything. Those ones, don't recommend keeping because I'm sure you probably wouldn't edit them. But those ones that you are umming and ahhing about, it's worth keeping because you never know, you might need to edit them. So having some sort of cloud storage or something like that, or a hard drive that you can plug in somewhere, is absolutely crucial to keep like a bulk storage of everything. It's always good to keep a backup, not just for photography, but for a lot of things on the digital world because, something can go wrong with your SD card and everything goes wrong. So keeping a backup of it, extremely important. And yeah, making sure that you have that ability to go back and edit them is great as well. So speaking of editing, I mentioned this earlier, RAW. Always shoot in RAW. Now some cameras allow you to shoot both JPEG and RAW, and especially if you shoot in Fuji, which is a very popular camera system for street photography, they have film simulations, meaning you can shoot your JPEG with the built-in Fuji simulations, which is basically like editing your picture for you, giving you sort of like a filmic look. And then you've also got the raw file as well, which means you can port it into Lightroom or anything along those lines and edit it yourself, change the lighting, change anything about it to make it your own. That's important. On JPEG, it's a very lossless compressed file, so you cannot edit much. You can do some bits, but edit it too far, it's going to look horrible. Raw keeps everything. It's an uncompressed, lossless image, so you make changes, it will work because it's basically straight out of camera as it was shot. A JPEG, all compressed down for a smaller file format, meaning you can't change much without that compression to really show. So shooting raw, really important. That's probably one of the first lessons they will teach you in any camera school, is raw is important, but it does take up a larger file size. So having SD cards and a few of them is also important. And if you're shooting on a phone, because like I said, it is a possibility, making sure you back up your images to iCloud on iPhone or anything like that will help you save storage space as well, and will help you keep a backup when you need it. The next thing, and it sort of links, is you might not want to edit your photos, but having a basic understanding on how editing works and what you can change in your image is vital. Because if you have messed up something and you are shooting in RAW, but you really like the composition, if you edit it, change the lighting, change the brightness, change the saturation, you can pull all of that detail back and have an image that's usable again. So, for example, there's this photo, and it's not my favorite from the trip by any means. It was just a walking past shot. But this person here, it looks okay, right? It looks okay. That is not how it was shot. It was terribly overexposed because I forgot to change my ISO and all that on my camera as I left a very dark indoor room to being outside. So walking in the Paris sun in August made my image very overexposed, but because I was shooting in RAW, I was able to edit it and bring it back down to see some of the detail back. Now, as I say, it's not a perfect shot by any means because it was a shot as I was walking. It wasn't like I stood and composed it, and it was, terribly edited to get back to being able to actually see what it was. So there's things like that. Having a basic understanding of editing, even if you don't plan to edit your photos and you like the straight out of camera look, is always good to have in case of emergencies. And there's tons of resources on YouTube and stuff like that if you want to self-teach yourself how to edit on your preferred editing program. Also, don't be afraid to shoot in whatever way you want. There are so many people that say you're not a true photographer if you shoot in auto, but when starting out, shoot however you feel comfortable. I started off shooting in auto and then quickly changed to aperture priority, but other than that, it's absolutely fine if you want to stay on auto. It doesn't really matter. They're your photos. If they look good at the end of the day, great. I now really like shooting everything manual. I change all my settings on the fly and adjust for the situation that I'm in, and that's great. But before, ask me a couple of years ago when I first started doing street photography, not a chance. I feel like I'll miss anything. And that's not the case now, but being comfortable is the most important thing. So if you feel like you need to shoot in auto to save you missing a shot, do so. And don't feel sad that people are telling you otherwise. And also, linking onto that, and probably the last major point, don't worry about what other people are doing. Find your own way, do your own thing. Sure, you can have inspirations from other people that you might find that they do great images, but do your own thing. Don't try to copy anyone. Don't try to do what they're doing. Don't just buy a new camera because someone else has bought a new camera. Do your own thing, and you will find that life is a lot less stressful when you're not looking at other people's work and wishing you were like them. Because photography is so perspective based that it doesn't really matter who's shooting what. You're always going to have people that don't like it, and you're always going to have people that love it. So shooting your own way and making your own mark is the most important thing. Find your own path, find your own look, shoot your own stuff. There's the great thing about street photography is no one can really have the exact same image as another person, even if they shot the photo at the exact same time, because perspective might be something different. Someone might be focusing on shadow, someone might be focusing on, the subject's colors. All of that sort of stuff can make a completely different image, even if it's the same scene. So doing your own thing and enjoying it and having fun going out shooting will be your best bet, because you can then go out shooting more, and that is the most important thing. So thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you next week. Happy New Year. Bye bye.